It says recording in progress. Okay.
Yeah, you can pause that and turn it back on. So you're recording when the meeting officially starts.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I see that now. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to pause it.
I know we did, and we've had NSPIRE inspections. You know, they still haven't launched it, you know, as the official UPCS replacement. And so, but this might be kind of the last best opportunity to help shape it and give, you know, feedback to HUD before they do that. That's my understanding at this point, but Dennis and Scott may have other things to share.
Yeah, I'll just say that this has been a multi-year effort to roll this out for them. And, you know, this is highly operational. So from our perspective, it would really be good to get the folks on this call, you know, to get your perspective on the unintended consequences, which may be embedded into this process, because I'm sure there are some. You know, this is a committee product that's been kicking around the fourth floor for years. And it's gone through many iterations and many different changes of leadership. And so when you go through something like that, rarely do you get a really crisp, good process. And so I'm just concerned that something's going to slip through that I don't catch because, quite frankly, you know, I'm not as operational as you guys. So this is really helpful. So I appreciate everybody coming together, because I want to listen and just see, you know, what we need to really focus on to tweak or to help the REACT staff think through from your perspective out there in the mission field, as it were. So that's from my perspective. I really do appreciate everybody coming together. Looking forward to hearing the comments.
Dennis, I think we're ready for you. Are you ready for me to share my screen?
You'll have to can you put that document up when I need it to, because I'm doing the Zoom on my iPad and I'm on my desktop with the files, so I don't have the same. I can't put it up myself, in other words.
Absolutely. You just tell me when you want me to put it up and I'll put it up.
Okay, so let me start with a small introduction. Some of you obviously have known me for years. American Property Consultants is my company. We've been around since the pilot program. We had 3 of the original 25 inspectors back in 1998. So I've literally been doing this for 24 years. And I just want to mention that Mike Gantz on the line too. And the company he works with has been with us for a very long time as well. So you have 2 really well-experienced people, both of us in Florida, as a matter of fact. He's over by Fort Myers over there. And we're competitors, but we're also friends. So we share a lot of things because we have the common goal, and that is to help housing authorities know and understand what HUD is attempting to do with these inspections. What's bringing us together today is a recent Federal Register notice that came out asking for comment by August 1st. Now, Kim, I'm not sure who's actually going to respond to this from the FAHRO group in terms of preparing responses, or whether they'll be individual, whether there'll be a group response or an individual response. But the one document that I've already sent and that Kim has sent to you is there's 13 questions that they're asking response to. And I've actually drafted some of my own personal comments to those. And Kim's going to share that to you when we get to that point. But before we do, let me explain what the intent of that notice is. And like Scott said, this has been a multi-year event with different leadership. We actually started out with DJ Lavoie at the helm for the deputy director for REACT. And we now have Ashley Sharif. I sometimes say sheriff because that's the way it's spelled. So we got a new sheriff in town, if you will, for REACT. There are some things that are going on, and like Scott kind of alluded to, what I'm starting to get a sense of feeling for now is that we're racing to the finish line, folks. There was HUD's return to operation and doing REACT inspections back in September of 2020, and it was a failure. They tried to use the heat map to determine Can we get back out doing inspections? And at the COVID rates ramped up at the same time they tried to get out, which ended up causing no REACT inspections to occur. So they come the winter spring timeframe of 2021, they actually changed the approach to using the CDC recommendations for social distancing and wearing gloves and sanitation and masks. And they got back out doing REACT inspections. And at that point in June of 2021, they actually said that they wanted public housing to be done under the NSPIRE program. But the problem was the NSPIRE program was lagging, and they had not got as far along in the actual pilot inspections of the NSPIRE program. So they ended up renewing the contract for the reverse auction for the REACT inspectors. And they didn't want to do that, but they were forced to do that. And then they turned around and basically said everybody's getting another REACT. In fact, in this about 3 weeks ago, there was a conference call and Ashley Sharif actually said that April 2023, which is where they kicked the can to in the last Federal Register notice for the program. That's the NSPIRE pilot program. They had kicked the can down the road to April 2023 because they weren't going to be able to finish it in September 2021. And she actually said 3 weeks ago, that's a hard date for public housing. So when I say we're racing to the finish line here, we're being told now that April 2023, the light bulb turns on for NSPIRE, which means we're under a year and we still don't know what we're doing. We have no implementation plans. We have no scoring. We've seen nothing on scoring whatsoever. We're up to 2.2 on the standards, the definitions for the inspection. And this recent document is really an issue with the HOTMA regulation. And I don't know that much about it, but I can speak to it from the outside of basically this is the congressional mandate from 2016 where all government inspections, not just HUD, but all government inspections are going to fall under one inspection protocol for the technical basis. Program processes and details will all remain the same. So your housing choice voucher program, you will still have the same policies and procedures, but the technical basis for the inspection will become NSPIRE. Now that HQS, if you will, the standards for inspecting under that program, they were actually being looked at to be modified already under a system called UPCS-V. And that went on for a 2-year pilot. It was renewed for a pilot. They were doing a great job out there. They had a crew of about 20 to 30 people nationwide, HUD did. And they were going out and working with people, giving them computers, implementing how do you convert your HQS inspection to a UPCS type inspection. Well, now we're getting rid of UPCS, so everything's becoming NSPIRE. So that's been now rolled over into what they're calling it NSPIRE-V, just because it has a label of those folks at HUD that are working on that program, but it's all going to become NSPIRE. And this recent document actually talks about merging certain aspects of the housing choice voucher program and those people that went RAD years ago and got away from public housing. Guess what? You're welcoming back to the REACT inspection. So project-based vouchers, if you went that way, you're coming back into getting the REACT inspection as well. But there's more detail than I can really explain in a short session like this. But what this current notice is by August 1st, they're looking for responses from people on 13 questions. But Kim and I were talking at the beginning of this, and I had said to her, I said, you should not limit your questions to just these 13 questions. One of the questions that I have personally, and I generally act as a technical representative for the different groups that I work with, ALMA and FAHRO and such. I usually, they ask the questions, but in this case, they just recently got rid of the rationale codes in the 2.2 issue of the standards, which is referenced by this current Federal Register notice. So I will be personally commenting on those because I'm going to be asking the question, where did they go? They're really important. We have to have those. That's the basis of why we're inspecting the item. You can't take that away. It needs to be there. So that's something I personally will be commenting on. So don't limit your comments to these 13 questions, but that's what we're in the discussion today. That's what we're looking at. And one other date of note that we should have here is that April 2023 is public housing implementation of NSPIRE. We don't really know what that means, but it's a hard date. Multifamily will actually be October of 2023. Now, at this point, Kim, I'm prepared to talk about those 13 questions. And then actually I have, let me do this first. I have a handful of personal concerns about NSPIRE to begin with that I just want to point out to everybody. So I didn't write these down for you, Kim, but people could take notes. Yes.
You said public housing in April of 23. What about, does that also include housing choice voucher replacing HQS, or is that at a different date?
Well, they didn't differentiate that.
I mean, to me, that's an even bigger deal because we would have to have our HQS inspectors all trained and ready to go on NSPIRE V.
Yeah, I don't think Ash is launching the HQS changes that fast. I think it's enough on the public housing piece. Unfortunately, we get to be the guinea pigs, but I do think this is just way too fast for where we're at in the actual process. But I don't believe
Scott, yeah, Scott, I agree with you wholeheartedly. And William, you touched on the soft spot that how are they really going to do this? Because you look at a voucher program, how does REACT come out and inspect the voucher program? We do in Maryland, we do Prince George's County, 5,000 inspections a year. Half of them fail. That's 7,500 inspections. How do you do a sample on a program that has 5,000 vouchers? Are you going to be the quality assurance of 10%? Are you going to take a sample and go see private landlords where people have?
Is that your understanding? Is it your understanding that HUD is going to start doing some NSPIRE V inspections or quality control inspections themselves?
I'm asking the question, just like Scott said. I don't even think they have an understanding what that means to them. But they're saying that the REACT inspector will go out and inspect your HQS program. Yeah, REACT's going to show up. What does that mean? We have no idea. So Scott's entirely right. They're not prepared for this at all. So I think we're going to take baby steps here, but they are kind of rushing to the finish line to get it in place, and that's probably congressionally mandated more than anything. Yeah.
Well, and when you get I understand from Ash's perspective, when you try to move a place like HUD, the only thing that does this is deadlines and setting deadlines, but also the fastest place to move a deadline is in the HUD building. So that those deadlines can move. But if you don't set one, you'll never get there. So from Ash's perspective, this has been going on for a long time. So set this date. Let's get these comments out. But I think one of the things that I'm taking away already is that needs to be job one, is say, look, Ash, I get that we need to have a deadline, but you don't have half of the stuff out that we need to accomplish April. So, July 1 is good. August 1 would be great because it gives us time to get through this, and it gives us kind of a soft start in a month like August, which is even better for HUD. So, I don't think that there's a HOTMA deadline that says April. I think it just says they need to be responsive to the appropriators at some point to say, here's what we've done. And those budget hearings are usually there in the spring. But this is a quick answer. If it were me, I'd simply say, we've given the authorities until August to do this. We look forward to coming back before you in the fall to give you some feedback on how it starts. So, those are the things that we'll talk with Ash about. But, the three buckets that I do see is, one, it's public housing. Two, it's how is multifamily going to do? And then three, what is this HQS process? And hopefully that is a far removed launch, because there's a lot of policy to think through on that, I think.
So Scott, I would agree with you. But I'd also add to what you're saying is that out of everything they've done so far, they actually have a separate staff inside of HUD that was doing UPCSV already with a group of housing authorities. I think it was, I know they were looking for more volunteers on the HQS side, but the comment they had made was they had something like 150 or so housing authorities. They already have a better experience on the HQS side of going out and doing inspections and moving HQS to UPCSV and now to NSPIRE. So they already have that mechanism in place with that crew that they have in-house. And they have the NSPIRE pilot. My clients that I've been talking to, the inspectors are racing through the inspection. Nobody's getting any feedback from it. They don't hear anything other than take care of these 24-hour items. So that they don't even know what's going on, literally. And there's 4,500 of those. They're probably up to about 4,000 by now. And I think that April date has to do with the other comment that was made was that they're going to be caught up in their backlog of inspections by that point, and that between June of last year and April this year, everybody's going to get one more REACT inspection under UPCS, and then they're going to go to NSPIRE. So come May, I think they need to. I think their intention is that any new REACT inspection, say either, I guess the end of the quarter is what, January, February, March. So April 1 is a new quarter. And I think April 1, they want to be using NSPIRE for any REACT inspections that they're going out to do. I think that's the intent.
Okay.
Now, I got a handful of comments that I want to make that, I've been working with the industry on NSPIRE. We started this back in literally 2019. There were listening sessions. Actually, the development started in 2018. In 2019, in January, they started the listening sessions in Philadelphia, and I was at that first one. And so since that point, my experience with it and with the standards, number one, and everybody should take note of this, there's too many life-threatening things. They've added things to life-threatening that you would look at and you would question. Some of them, I have to agree with them. We have a nurse pull station, a call for aid string. If they tie it up to the towel bar, they tape it to the wall because of the cat, that's a life-threatening device. If I'm having a heart attack, I'm on the floor and I'm trying to reach over and pull the string and it's not there, that's no good. So they made that from a regular health and safety issue to a life-threatening health and safety issue. But the problem is, and Scott, this is a big thing that from an industry standpoint, we really want to push. There's discussion going on about it. It's already built into the HQS program. HUD needs to take into consideration tenant-caused issues. When the housing authority walks out that door and they've advised the resident that, and they've given a lease violation notice saying you can't do something like this, you can't take that smoke detector down, you can't tie that call for aid string back up, and the resident turns around and does it anyways, the housing authority, it's beyond their control, which is one of the wordings in the documentation that, things beyond the housing authority's control. You can't hold the housing authority accountable for things that the resident does after you've corrected them and given them a lease violation.
Well, Michael Gant and I have never seen that happen, have we, Michael?
Right. So some of the other life-threatening things that have come up in there is like the dryer vent. And the dryer vent is totally reasonable. If it's not connected right and you got a gas dryer, you got carbon monoxide issues. If it's clogged up, the dryer could catch fire. So we just got to carefully look through all the things that are life-threatening and determine whether they really should be or not. But worse than that is HUD mandated the consistency between the inspections across the board. Consequently, how can you have a 30-day repair time for something in the Housing Choice Voucher Program and it be life-threatening for public housing? That's just a total inconsistency. It just doesn't make any sense. And there's a bunch of these. So in public housing, you got to repair it in 24 hours, but in the voucher program aspect of NSPIRE V, if you will, then you got 30 days to take care of it. I mentioned those rationale codes to you, and I think they're extremely important. I know when I worked with Dan Williams, I was pointing out that to keep people from arbitrarily changing these definitions down the road, which happened to UPCS, that was the NIS stuff, not industrial standard, and coming up with a bunch of nonsense that we're looking at that's really not relevant, then the rationale codes prevent that from happening. But just like anything else, they kind of got overzealous about the rationale codes, and there's too many of them. But then when they issued the definition change with this Federal Register notice, they turned around and eliminated all of them. So what's going on with the rationale codes? We need a primary rationale code of why I'm looking at this item. We need a secondary. Everything else needs to go away. If you got a bunch of other reasons, if everything's important, nothing's important. So we got to boil it down to what's really important. They talk about this all being critical to quality for the resident, and there's lots of good things in there. Something like overgrown penetrating vegetation, i.e. vines growing on the building or branches touching the building, that literally goes away in the inspection protocol. And that's a good thing. That's really a good thing. But there's still some of this condition and appearance stuff that really is just low level that really shouldn't even be in there. Why tell me that I need to make a repair to something, but it's discretionary when I make the repair? What's the point of that? Okay, make the repair, and next time I come back, I see that you still haven't made the repair, but that's okay because it's discretionary. Why should HUD even note it then if it's discretionary? A big thing, you probably already heard this, Scott, is some of the stuff they're doing is exceeding local codes and customs. Yeah. That's a big deal. If my local code allows me to do this and you're going to tell me I can't do it and I have to do more, does HUD have the authority to do that? Or if there's code conflicts, that could be another issue as well. I'm almost done, folks. Doing your annual inspections, you're required to do annual inspections under the new inspection model, but that's okay because public housing was already required to do that anyways, but it's just the multifamily that comes along now and has to do those annual inspections. But hey, folks, UPCS was not a preventative maintenance program inspection, and NSPIRE is going to be even less. So don't think that NSPIRE is going to be the end all to inspecting your property, because there's going to be a bunch of things that are just left out of there. They're not in there. So when you do preventative maintenance inspections, that's much different than doing NSPIRE HUD REACT compliance inspections. They're really much different. And last thing I have that are general comments is we can't jump into this April 2023 and say it sticks to the wall, because it doesn't. We need an advisory period like we did under the original UPCS implementation. And that advisory period should run minimum of a year, if not more, in terms of scores. And again, at this point, we haven't seen anything on scoring, so we have no idea what that even means. At that point, Kim, I'm done with my input. We could put the questions up. I'm sure Scott and maybe William or anybody else might want to have some comments themselves.
Yeah, let me ask you a quick question if I could. So back on the annual inspections, does it speak to, or should we work towards getting almost like a safe harbor created? If we're doing our annual inspections, we engage a third party, the third party comes in and kind of, I don't want to say verifies, but creates a record of, this goes back really in my mind to tenant cause issues. So if the third party comes out and basically comes out and says, hey, look, we've done the inspection. This property is, tracks right along with all of the requirements. And, we have this record that's created. Does it create is there a safe harbor created when we get a official REAC and they're coming out and seeing these tenant cause issues that we can say, look, we've been doing this for the last 3 years. Our external audit, our external reviewer has been marking us at 90, 95 or better. How should we think about that? Is there something that we should be doing to work with ASH to say, look, if I'm going to be paying for this annual process, I want to have some benefit for that? Does that make sense?
So Scott, Scott, I can answer that, because currently under UPCS, you're required to show the REACT inspector certifications for certain things that are really beyond the REACT inspector's capability. So okay. I'm going to see your certifications for elevators, boilers, fire alarms, your lead-based paint certification and your lead-based paint notifications to residents. So we already have that. In fact, that's an idea I was kind of developing with some of the folks I'm talking with, because I agree with you, is that if I bring a third party in that's a higher level authority, like take for instance, if my fire marshal locally has inspected my building for fire egress,
Right.
then I should show the REACT inspector that, and he doesn't have anything to say about my security bars on windows or window air conditioners, because the building's been evaluated that people can exit that building sufficiently without needing those windows for egress. But the REACT inspector's forced into a situation by the definitions to come out and inspect and say, well, you need it this way.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing you need.
Yeah, I think
So-
that's an area where we should continue to explore. So I think, if there's anything, I'd really like for this to help us make these things a lot less traumatic every single time we get the notice that the REACT is coming. If it's programmed, we're doing this annually, our own process, it should be a much more user-friendly experience when the HUD inspector comes out, just more of a confirmatory review of all the work we've been doing along the way.
Scott, not all, I mean, there are, I think, a fair number, I don't know what the percentage is, but I know there are housing authorities that do their own internal UPCS, or in this case, NSPIRE annual inspections, as opposed to contracting that out.
Dennis,
Would you
I
put-
don't know if you can see, I have it on the screen. We've got a couple questions already. I don't know if you want to address that before we start on the document questions and comments, or if you want to wait until to hold these things towards the end.
Well, I was looking at the questions as William was talking there. There's 3 questions up there right now. The NSPIRE requirements for multifamily are exactly the same as the NSPIRE requirements for public housing. So there is no difference, and you can go to the HUD website. You can simply Google HUD REACT NSPIRE, and it'll take you right to the NSPIRE pages, and just look for the standards. They call them standards instead of definitions because there's so much more to what you're getting there. So you can go right to that page and find it, but they're the same across the board for everybody. The second question is, the protocol for public housing right now today is still UPCS, and you'll still be inspected under the UPCS protocol. And April 2023 is the date when they switch over and start inspecting you. That's what we're told anyways, on that. So was there one more question?
No, I was just responding, telling them I see,
Okay.
I see their questions. So, okay.
Yeah, okay.
All righty. Can everybody see this document?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the questions. I'm going to get them on my computer so I can see them even better. My eyesight is diminished over the years here. So the first question for comment is, HUD is considering amending the standards to include a mold-like substance standard. This actually already exists in the protocol, and it's always been a point of contention because originally the definition, the defect was called mold, mildew, water stains, water damage, or rather actually water stains, water damage, mold, mildew, and then they turned around and reshuffled the words around, and the words mold, mildew came out at the beginning, and all of a sudden everybody said, well, how can you say that's mold? Are you certified to say that's mold? Well, mold is mold, and actually mold is a housekeeping issue in 99% of the time. So HUD has been looking at using thermography cameras. I got one right here on the shelf actually, to determine whether you have water intrusion through roof leaks or window leaks on your property. I think it's pretty audacious that they think that they're going to send somebody out that knows more than you about your property. So using higher level technologies is certainly warranted when you have a big problem, like if you have the building kind of problems that they had years ago when we started tightening up building envelopes, and you had accumulation of water moisture, and you had water leaking down between the the outside facade in the interior walls and you didn't know anything about it. We're not that complicated. We don't need to be trying to use this kind of stuff. So it's a very high expectation with a lot of sophistication, and you certainly don't want REACT inspectors showing up at your property. It's like you playing doctor. You know, you bring a stethoscope and see if there's a heartbeat or something. So my comment here is that this is way beyond what we should be doing in a compliance inspection. This is a compliance inspection. REACT's job is to ensure you're in compliance of maintaining the property. But I think what the housing authority should have is the housing authority should have a written plan in hand of how to deal extensive mold and mildew issues. Because if you get into a situation where you just went through a hurricane in Florida, which we could, and you end up with, I mean, I was over in New Orleans actually last year doing inspections on hurricane damaged units. And I walked into a unit and it was like a green jungle in there. Of course, people had moved out and such, but it was bad. So you need a plan in hand of how you deal with mold. I think that's a minimum in terms of being a housing advocate, providing housing. But turning units into a science project is the wrong approach. I'm stopping there, Kim, if anybody has any comments.
Okay. No. Apparently not. I think you can go ahead and move on.
Okay. The second question is actually near and dear to my own personal heart because I am actually a licensed water superintendent in the state of Maryland. One of my side jobs over the last 20 years has been running a water system for 800 homes. When they talk about drinking water in the Clean Water Act, my conversations with the Public Housing Directors Association has been the same way. Why are we trying to reinvent the wheel here? The EPA under the Safe Drinking Water Act provides the regulation of the quality of the water at the tap. There's an annual consumer confidence report provided by every water provider that's required under the EPA's regulations, and all that stuff is public domain issue. Yeah, sure, Flint, Michigan had a lead pipe problem, but that is known where it's known. I think the question is they're just trying to make sure that they're covering all the kind of issues that the residents could be subjected to. But again, this is way beyond the scope of doing a physical condition of the property.
Any questions for Dennis on number 2? Okay, moving right along.
Sure. Now, I'm gonna share with you some of my FAHRO conference call experiences from last week on question number 3 here, and I actually got a little bit of an eye opener. Now, I am an EPA Energy Star rater, so we've rated a lot of homes in Florida under the Energy Star program, and we're certified for doing all that stuff. And when the question came up here about regulations on heating and ventilation standards, again, it looked to me like, well, we're really outside of our bailiwick here, but they were looking, saying there's actually housing that doesn't have permanently installed heaters. And I mean, if you look at that, map, let me see, does this come up with the map here?
It's in the right-hand column.
Yeah. Okay. So for some reason, my iPad won't let me scroll up. I guess it's locked where it is or something. Oh, it's going sideways. There it is. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So if you look at that map and you look where Florida is, you're in a zone. The lower part of Florida is in a zone where you don't even literally do any heating. You're just doing cooling. But what came out of the discussion last week is we have places in the United States where they're using ventless heaters, which up in the Maryland area here, we haven't really outlawed those. But if you read what a ventless heater says, it says when you're burning this heater, you got to leave the window open for combustion air. And those things are not really acceptable. So I'm not sure where this comment was really intended to go, but obviously the map here shows that in different parts of the United States, we need to treat this differently. So that was what I kind of came up with for a response to this question. That means that you can't write a generic inspection requirement that works everywhere.
Okay, pausing there. Any questions or comments? All right.
Okay, the next question also talks about heating, and this really comes from the Housing Choice Voucher Program, because when you look at the Housing Choice Voucher Program, it was pretty basic in terms of what HUD asked you to do for inspection. It said it wasn't as complex as UPCS at all. It said look at an area and look at an item, and you had a form there called the 52580 that told the inspector to look at in these areas for looking at these items. Under UPCS, you're looking in an area, you're looking at items, you're looking for specific defects, and you have a set of criteria to determine a severity level if it meets that criteria. So it's much more complex. So what was allowed under HQS was defined in Chapter 10 of the Housing Choice Voucher Manual. You were allowed to adopt your own requirements. And of course, up in the Northeast, where we're based out of here, we also have an office in Florida there. When we go out on the Prince George's County Housing Choice Voucher Program, we have specific guidance on this time of the year. We have to be able to have window screens. This time of the year, we have to be able to have heat available. So this is very unique to a location. It's not something that you can write a general inspection criteria where the same inspector could inspect multiple parts of the United States and come up with the same thing. I myself was a little surprised when I went out to San Francisco and found that they don't really worry about insulating houses. Or if you go up into Oregon or Washington, we did inspections up there and it rains so much. So we got different climates in different parts of the country, and trying to create generic inspection documentation where the same inspector can go to different places and use it, it's impossible. It's just unreasonable to consider that.
Okay. Moving on to number 5.
And number 5 and number 6, well, number 5 really is similar to 6, or excuse me, number 5 is similar to number 4, but it's just talking about it for a different approach in terms of what the outside temperature is. So in one case, you're talking about 64 degrees, and the other is 68. So the same thing applies. It's not something that you can generically write an inspection. It's got to be specific to a location. And actually number 6 really, number 6 goes a little further because it talks about the inspector using test equipment. And my comment to that is the danger you run into is if you're going to use test equipment, then it really needs to, it needs to be calibrated. Well, who's going to determine that you've got calibrated equipment, and who's going to calibrate it? In the Energy Star program, the equipment we use, we have to send literally back to the manufacturer once a year, and they take and they calibrate that for us, and we have to maintain that certificate of calibration. So if we're going to start talking about using test equipment, then we got to get into calibrating. Once again, we're getting too sophisticated for a general observation inspection. And then in terms of your temperatures again should relate to what your heating and cooling requirements are for where you are located in the United States. And of course, a swamp cooler in New Orleans is a heck of a lot different than an air conditioner in Florida. So Again, we're trying to get too sophisticated to be able to have a REACT inspector who's a generalist. You know, they're not a building code official. They're not the electrical inspector. They're not the carpentry or building inspector. So the plumbing inspector. So a generalist can't really handle this kind of a situation.
I have a question, and this might sound really stupid, but Scott, I'm guessing because of the nature of these questions that the Florida HUD field office people probably haven't seen this at all, and they're not even aware of all this. And being that their Florida field office staff, they would have comments, but obviously nothing's been said from them.
I wouldn't think that, because it has to go through an internal clearance process. So it may just be that Florida has not commented. But I'll add that to my list for Ash.
Are we moving on to number 7, Dennis?
Okay. Number 7 addresses the situation of having things be permanent versus temporarily installed. And of course, a permanent installation is something that's hard mounted. It can't just be picked up and walked away with. And it's got a direct wiring source versus using a plug into an outlet. I was at a place about 2 weeks ago, and they had air conditioners, like the hotel kind of thing, plugged into a wall outlet, and it was all melted and overheated. Yeah, you know, hard wiring things and hard mounting things is the right way to do it. Anything short of that can easily be removed and disturbed and such like that. So, I mean, I think the answer to this is that, yeah, if we're saying that heating systems have to be required to be there, they should be hard mounted and hard wired. And anything else that's temporarily there is defeated by the pure fact that it can be removed, or it can cause issues because of the way it's installed. It's the same thing with carbon monoxide detectors. We're not going to allow anybody to use a plug-in carbon monoxide detector. If you have the ability to wire a carbon monoxide detector, which is another issue that I didn't mention that comes up in this move to NSPIRE, they're going to require carbon monoxide detectors. So you can't use a plug-in one for that to meet that requirement.
Okay, anybody have any questions so far?
I just want clarification on this. This is Kurt from the Punta Gorda Housing Authority. A lot of our Section 8 voucher holders are in homes that have the window AC units that are built in the wall from the 50s and 60s. Those are considered not permanent because you can slide them out and plug them in. And they also have a heat source.
Yeah, that's really true. You're really true is that there's probably more of that than not, because that's another issue. I just passed that over to Scott for consideration. Scott, one of our biggest issues, I was at the Baltimore Housing Authority yesterday, and I was in a 1941 building, and the windows in the building were all fogged up. And I was asking the question, I said, well, how many times have the windows been replaced in this building? Windows have a useful life of 20 years. If you got something that's been there for since 1941, well, it's older than any of us in this conversation today, of course, and it's somewhere like what, 83 years old or something like that. So if you got housing that is older housing, initially in this protocol, they gave you an allowance and a consideration for that. That got swept under the carpet when they did a mass management assessment subsystem change, and the capital fund, they kind of, I don't know what they did with it exactly, but they used to give more points, or they allowed points for an older property, because older properties are substandard to today's features in code, of course. And this, we're trying to create a modern inspection protocol that doesn't apply to older properties. I mean, it really does. And that gentleman's bringing up that question. It's like, well, yeah, that's what we got. We got, you know, a plug-in window air conditioner. That's what we got.
Okay, any more comments on that? All right, Dennis, I think we're at number 8.
Okay, and this brings up that situation that you might have unvented heating systems. And again, I was kind of surprised to find out that in some locales, and I think the gentleman was in Georgia on the call. He was an executive director from Georgia. And of course, he was talking about unvented. Yeah, that's what they have. They have unvented heating systems for the heating systems. And of course, again, the jurisdiction having authority where you live dictates whether you're allowed to use those as the primary heating system or not. And when they're installed, they're really supposed to have an oxygen supply provided to them, i.e. open a window or have it in, but there's no venting of the combustion gases, which means those combustion gases are in the unit. But the idea is you got 99.9% combustion going on, and you got a device there called an oxygen depletion sensor. And that oxygen depletion sensor senses the level of oxygen in the room. And of course, normally the oxygen level is 20% of the air. And if it falls down to some point, then it shuts the heater off. But when do you need to test that device? You know, does it fail and do you know it? I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions that very few people would recommend using unvented heaters in the Northeast. I can tell you that for sure.
Okay, number 9.
I'm just looking at what I said here. Again, in the current UPCS definitions, they required us to push the test button to test to see if the GFI was working properly. They're talking about using a tester, and they're talking about qualifications for using that tester. You can go to Lowe's, Home Depot, your hardware store. You can buy a tester for $6 to $9, and you can test your GFIs. Those testers are not going through any kind of rigorous certification, but they probably have a UL stamp on them or something like that. So, I mean, I'm fine with using a tester. It's not an expensive component. Basically, it's going to, you know, you've got 3 prongs there. You've got the hot wire, you got the ground wire, and you got the ground itself. And basically, it takes and leaks some of the current to ground and causes it to trip. I've been in inspections where I test it by pushing the button and it won't trip. And then my escort brings a tester along, and I recommend they do, and they show me that it works with the tester. So testers aren't a problem. I'm fine with comment number 9 myself. I'm not sure about if there's other people that have different comments about what that might mean.
Anybody have any
But
questions or comments
I
on
think
question?
I think your comment's good. What does unprotected mean? What it should be local code. That's what I think that's right.
Yeah. Well, the other part of this, and I prefaced this at the beginning when I said I had some general comments. I said that they're going to exceed local code. Now in Maryland, you do not have to bring a property up to the current code unless you renovate more than 50% of the property. But because of other reasons, many folks have already added GFIs within 6 foot of the sink or 6 foot of a water source. So this does open up a can of worms in terms of you have properties out there that were built before 1984 when they started putting GFIs in. And of course, in 1984, they were only putting GFIs in, I think it was the kitchen at that point. And then they went from the kitchen to the bathroom. And then they opened it up to any wet location, which gave you basements and garages and carports and outside circuits. So again, you know, what's out there for housing, what we're using for housing is not modernized, but this inspection protocol is going to be modernized. So what do we do when we go to a property and they don't have GFIs And now we're telling them, you got to put GFIs in 6 foot from the sink. If you're a private landlord in the Section 8 program, you can kiss that one goodbye, because I'm just going to go over and rent to people that aren't using a voucher. So that's a big problem in the Section 8 HQS type inspection program. In the multifamily, it's money. Somebody's got to spend money to do it. So it's a cost.
Dennis, there's a question or a comment in the chat. It's on the screen. Seems to me that the inspector is not allowed to use a tester under current protocol. And I've had one say that we can't use ours to show it works.
You know, the inspector is supposed to use professional common sense, and professional common sense says that if they have a tester and you show them that it works, then you know, that should be allowed. I don't think HUD ever addressed that kind of comment directly, but I've always told everybody that you're welcome to try to demonstrate something works if the inspector says it doesn't work. HUD never told the inspector not to allow someone to demonstrate that something works. So I guess that's unfortunate that an inspector is acting like that, but I don't think that's the proper way REACT intended them to work. That's pretty much all I can say about that.
Gotcha. Okay, any other further comments for question 8 and question 9?
Oh, wait, did I jump? You mean question 10? Did I?
No. I kind of blew through 8. We just went directly from 8 to 9. And so I just
Yeah,
want to.
9 was the GFI.
Right.
8 was the, yeah. So we're on number 10 then, I think.
Yeah, is there anybody have anything for question 8 or 9?
I got you.
The only comment I have, this is Kurt again from Punta Gorda Housing Authority, is that a lot of GFIs are tied in with regular electrical outlets. So necessarily the GFI might be not within 6 feet of a water source, but it's connected to a GFI. So how is that going to be determined with the inspection?
That's a good question, but I think there's a logical answer, of course, is that if okay, if they're not using, there is an answer to that, but I have to be using the tester to do it, right?
Right.
If I put it,
exactly.
Yeah. So if I don't use a tester, how do I verify that the outlet within 6 foot of the sink is GFI protected? Well, you know, one of the things, of course, is when you buy the GFI, you get those little labels that you're supposed to put on the circuits downstream that are actually protected by that GFI. But whatever, the point is, you got to use the tester.
Right.
Yeah, but you could put labels on them. Hey, there's a label there.
You put stickers on them, but you know they're going to be torn off by tenants.
Right, got it. Yeah, that's a good point.
Hey, moving on to question 10.
Yeah, question 10 actually goes into an area that I've never been excited about in my last 24 years of doing this, and that's this whole thing about water on or near electrical. You know, in Florida, this time of the year, it literally rains every day, right? And you got electrical panels that are outside in different places. So how do you, at what point do you say water on or near an electrical panel is a problem? I had a basement in a building in Washington, D.C., where water was leaking. When it rained, water leaked through the wall on the floor, and the inspector wrote that up as an issue because the electrical panel was right there, and in saying that, like, if you go to do something in the electrical panel, you're standing on a wet floor. Now, I agree that is not a safe condition, but to make that a REACT issue is stretching the problem. We tried to appeal that and we lost it. So I think if you're going to write a standard, and of course this is already in UPCS, it's not in the HQS side. But if you're going to use that standard, write that standard, you need to tighten it up in terms of the water is actually in contact with the panel versus that it's in or around. So it may be an issue, it may not be an issue. And why make people appeal things and bring in high level expensive contractors like hiring an electrician to come in and say, well, that's not really a problem, to appeal it. We need to write the standard better. You know, it's too generalized in or around electrical.
Yeah, again, a lot of electrical panels here in South Florida are on the outside of the homes.
Right, right. And it's raining on them every day. So that is one that we need to have them tighten that up, or even get rid of it for that matter.
You hear that, Scott?
I do.
Okay. Any comments on 10? All right, moving to 11.
Okay, so 11 actually touches on that general issue that I gave you in the beginning, that for public housing agencies, some things are life-threatening, and for the Housing Choice Voucher Program, you can make a repair in 30 days. You know, either it has a direct safety issue, or directly affects the health of the resident, or it doesn't. Life-threatening shouldn't be things that are implied. In the nuclear power industry, you're not allowed to take and postulate multiple events to consider an accident. In other words, you can't have an earthquake and a hurricane at the same time. And I just bring that up because I mean, that's a very safe industry. Going into housing, which consequences are generally much lower. If it really has a direct effect on it, and the other side of it is by saying it has to be taken care of in 24 hours, if it's something that's allowed by local codes and custom, but you're going to tell me I got to repair it in 24 hours, and I have to submit to you via this electronic input system that they're developing that I've done this, well, I either did it or I didn't do it, because I don't have to do it, but you're telling me I do have to do it. So it needs to be sorted out. 24 hours should be limited to those things that have a direct, like I touch a wire, I get electrocuted. Okay, the carbon monoxide, because the flue's misaligned, I could die. But there's some of them in there that's like, well, how's this a direct effect on people? So I want to see them have less 24 hours. This statement here on question number 11 is that what they want to do is they want to take what they're requiring the public housing agency to do in 24 hours and make that 24 hours in the voucher program. And we want to go the other way. We want less.
Okay, any comments on 11?
I'm going to step up for a second because I'm going to grab one of my field guide books, because in the field guide book now we have the life-threatening for NSPIRE, and I just want to grab one real quick.
Okay.
Hey, Kim, I just want to note that it's so difficult getting inspections in the voucher program scheduled. If there's something changes to where it's a 24-hour item, you've got to come back in and reschedule that inspection to your inspector's time frame for 24 hours later, plus making the landlord do it within 24 hours. And along with COVID, it's very difficult getting contractors into our facilities. I know landlords are also having troubles.
That's for sure. Yeah. And actually that was brought up at the Coalition for Affordable Housing. That was brought up almost in the same context as what you're saying. And nobody has an answer.
So, Kim, I grabbed one of my field guide books. A lot of you have probably seen this. We give them away free at the conference. So come to the FAHRO conference and you can get one of these free. But I've put NSPIRE in the back of this now. So we have inside, outside, and all that kind of stuff. And one of the sections I added in here is a life-threatening tab. And I just quickly looked through here for something that I thought was something that was really not an emergency issue. But it's something you should need to take care of. And that is that an exit sign's not working properly. Okay. Nobody's going to die because an exit sign's not working properly. Now somebody can argue, well, that's a safety device, so it needs to be operational. But again, being electrocuted or inhaling carbon monoxide detector, that's a direct effect. There's one in here, toilet. if you only have one toilet in the unit, that's a 24-hour item. Now, that's
Hey,
reasonable.
Dennis?
Yeah,
How does it, like the exit signs as an example, we're inspected, well, with COVID, it kind of backed off a little bit, but we're inspected in our main office anyway for our exit signs by the fire marshal. So is their
Right.
protocol going to go override a local fire marshal's inspection?
exactly the point Scott was making at the beginning. If a third party that is certified and qualified to give a professional opinion says it's okay, then does a REACT inspector whose pedigree is so much lower than that, does that override? And that's in fact, I would say what they should do is they should accept the fire marshal's report as a certification and not even look at egress. Let that be a local issue. Or if you do raise the question in such a way that you have to have a follow-up to the inspection with supplemental information. Don't make you fight an appeal and go out and pay somebody to come in and look at something. So yeah, that's the approach and the point.
Okay, to Dennis's comment about the conference, I will speak to the conference and meetings, FAHRO meetings when we wrap up. So any other comments on number 11? Okay, moving on to 12.
Now, number 12, I'm drawing on my experience, and I don't want to seem to be like acting like I know it all, because I certainly don't. Once I step out of this technical vein that I work in, UPCS, I do have that mechanical engineering background, so I know and understand a lot of that detail technically, but I'm certainly not a program person at all for housing, and I won't even ever act like one. But when it comes to this cockroach thing, I've inspected enough units to know and understand. You got somebody with a housekeeping problem, they got roaches in that unit and they spread to the units nearby. But the way HUD approaches this is they write this definition by counting dead roaches. If you have a pest control program in place and you're paying monthly and annual fees for that program, there's a good chance a REACT inspector is going to come in and find dead roaches or mice in a trap or something. So once again, this is kind of that third party authority thing is I've written appeals where I said, yeah, you found a couple dead roaches because here's the program. They spray once a month, they do this, they do that, but nobody cleans up the dead roaches, especially when they're hidden in places that only the REACT inspector looks. Okay. So this is something that needs to be tightened up, or the housing authority has a program and they're credited for having that program, and they document that program as some kind of document. So when the REACT inspector comes in, they show them that we've got a program and we're managing this program. So that's my take on that.
Well, too, and in Florida, we all know we have all had issues if we're going through a drought or if it's rained too much. The bugs, especially the ants, move in where you've never had issues before. I mean, that happens to everybody, regardless if you're in public housing or not. And just depending on the timing of the inspection, it could be one of those times. And it's really not a problem. It's only a temporary issue. Okay, any comments on number 12? And I think 13. All right. Number 13, Dennis.
Okay, and actually number 13, I'm gonna add to it. Here they talk about should they add more time for infestation treatment and such like that. Well, obviously we don't use heavy doses of chemicals anymore because that's a bad effect on the residents. So we're going to minimize how much treatment we do it over a period of time. But the other part of this, there's a bigger picture here, is that if you come in and do a inspection and you find a bunch of things that are 24 hours, we're going to take care of those important things in 24 hours. If you find a bunch of things that are 30 days, you may overload my ability to do maintenance in 30 days. with small agencies. You know, small agencies may have a couple maintenance people total. And now all of a sudden you found all these things that I got to repair and report back to you in 30 days. So applying this only to infestation is not enough. This needs to be applied across the board where there's at least some mechanism in place. And, you know, for the Section 8 HQS, for the voucher program in the Mid-Atlantic area here, if we go out in Prince George's County and we cite somebody for having peeling paint on the outside of a building and it's in the middle of the winter, they're not going to paint it in the next 30 days. They're not going to paint it until temperatures rise up to 50 degrees. So this 30-day thing, I know it has to do with the voucher program. So what happens in those situations in the voucher program? We give them extensions and we document it.
Okay.
And one other thing, of course, the supply chain issue may prevent you from being able to buy materials and doing the maintenance in less than 30 days as well.
Right. Okay. That is it for the actual questions. Dennis, do you have any wrap-up comments?
No, just that, you know, I pointed out in the beginning, I know the groups I work with are generally, you know, responding to this. I am going to respond myself mainly about the rationale codes. And I don't know if William had a plan in mind. I know he stepped off now. Maybe Scott's your point person. I don't know. But Scott, if you need to follow up with me at all, my information's somewhere.
That sounds great.
Well, what I believe we're going to do is that we are encouraging all of our members to respond independently, and then FAHRO will respond as an organization. So we definitely want as many comments sent to the Federal Register as possible. And we highly encourage and ask that everyone on this call, you know, make comments independently, and then FAHRO will do so as well.
Remember, every comment has to be responded to. And so don't think that your comment, no comment is too small, because HUD will have to respond to every comment submitted.
Okay. I have a couple things to wrap up, but before we move on and tie up the loose ends, does anybody have any more comments or questions as it relates to these questions specifically? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, this is Louis from the Housing Authority in Tampa. Just to, in regards to how to provide a comment to HUD, what is the process of how to get it done?
Okay, so it is through the Federal Register, and when I will send up a wrap-up e-blast to everybody, and we'll have the link. But is it on this document actually? Dennis, did we put the link on here?
No, I didn't put the link on there, but the link
Okay.
to the document is there. So if they click on that link right there, they might have to do a control click.
Yeah.
But if you do a click on that, it'll take you to the document, and then right there in the document, it tells you how to respond. Oh, you can do it. Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
But
so-
we can. It's only the person that is actually having the document.
So
We don't have access to it.
okay, so did you see the e-blast that I've sent over the past couple weeks reminding everybody of this call? Because this document here is in those e-blast, and then you can go from there. But I'll send it out again. I'm going to send out
Thank you.
another link and so forth.
Kim, you might just remind everybody, we sent them a blank one, not one with my comments. So everybody could use this table to essentially generate your comments if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yes, that was blank. The right column was totally blank.
And maybe some people want to have a copy of the one that's filled out. I don't think they got that.
I can include that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yes, I can do that. So what I will do is, again, I will do a wrap-up email with the things that you've asked for. This recording I'll give you the link. I'm gonna put it on FAHRO's YouTube channel. I will send you this document. I will send you the blank document and the instructions of how to submit your comments. And so that should wrap up the instructions on how to make your comments. You can always email me or call the office if you have any questions or have any issues and can't get it uploaded, or you're having struggles. As far as just some housekeeping stuff for FAHRO in general, it is on the FAHRO website, but since I have everybody's attention, if you would save the date for October 19th through 21, that is the Executive Directors Forum. And that is a fall version of our forum. And that is the Executive Directors Forum, as we call it, the ED Forum, is limited to EDs and high senior staff. So deputy executive directors, deputy CEOs, and the like. So it is not a conference style training. As most of you, I think, know, we did forego the annual conference this year based on feedback we received from the membership saying that they just couldn't afford the time or didn't have staff to send because everybody's short staffed. And when you've only gone one maintenance person, you can't send your one maintenance guy to a conference for a week. It's just not feasible. So instead, we decided to do a second ED forum. And so that's what we're going to do this October 19th through the 21st in Tampa. Information will be sent out on that. And for the 2023 conference, we are doing some site inspections, and hopefully we'll have a date and a venue wrapped up in the next 4 weeks or so. So we will be able to share that so you can make plans for next year. And we're very excited, kind of back to normal. Dennis, I'm sure, will do a session or two for us, and Scott will as well. Scott's session is always very well attended. So, we're looking forward to going back to some normalcy and having a great conference and getting everybody some training that they've been lacking for the last few years. So that's kind of how we're doing things and what we're doing. If you have any questions or need any assistance of any kind, please let the office know. Everybody's been putting up tons of job postings and RFPs and requests for bids. And so we've been assisting in that. Some of you are able and know how to do that on your own. And some of you have been asking us to put that up for you, and we're happy to do so. So please utilize the website as much as you can and let us know if you have any struggles, and we will help you through it. And I see that our president, Shannon, is on the call. Hello, Shannon. We're glad you're here. Do you have any final comments before we break? I shouldn't say break, but before we wrap up? You're on mute. There you go.
There you go. Actually, no, I don't.
Okay.
All is quiet. That's a good thing,
right?
I think.
Okay. Well, we thank all of you for your time. We're glad that we could present this to you as a member benefit and for free. Dennis, thank you so much, my friend. We appreciate you so much. Scott, thank you for being here to represent the industry in Florida and to help us navigate those federal waters that are up there in DC. We're grateful to you as well. And we shall be in touch with you soon. Everybody be safe, be happy, and we will talk at you later.
Great. Thanks a lot. Very
Thank
informative.
you.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye.